What's an adult problem nobody prepared you for? Before we start, don't forget to subscribe to the channel so you don't miss the next videos. I wish you a pleasant viewing experience. Story 1. How hard it is to meet people, sustain relationships. When you're young, you are constantly surrounded by people your age, going through on essentially the same schedule as you. But once you're an adult, it's really hard to meet people in between the daily grind, and even harder to plan things with people you do know because they are also living their own lives. Story 2. Elderly parent losing their mind due to dementia and needing care, but nursing homes are $7K per month, in-home nurses are $3K per month. Yeah, that's a problem that no one could have prepared me for. Edit to add, I found my answers and my parent is cared for now, but the path leading up to the answers was a terrible and scary path. Story 3. Getting laid off. Everyone's working, doing their thing. Workload fluctuates and slows down after the pandemic. The expectation is for us to give 2 weeks notice when we leave, but I'll be damned if I didn't get a 6-hour heads up that my computer would lock at the end of the day and my severance check would be in the mail in a week. Story 4. Nobody told me socializing was a life skill and not just an entertainment activity. As an ostracized kid, I always figured I'd have time to figure out how to find decent people as an adult. I didn't know the barriers I created for myself would impede my daily life and career so much. Things you never think of, like, how am I going to get home from this dental appointment if I'm still affected by anesthesia? Story 5. IDK if anyone could have prepared me for it, but I was definitely not prepared to be diagnosed with a chronic illness even before I turned 30. No specific illness is a typical part of adulthood, as in, we can get sick at any time and there's no age bar. But I personally thought I still had time before I got sick. And to have a condition, fibromyalgia, that I can't explain to anyone because it's not as straightforward, is a whole different frustrating element that makes me want to shut myself off from the world. I'm in my ranting mood today, apparently. Story 6. The crushing realization that this is all there is and the crippling depression that follows. You spend years getting a degree, or even if you are in college, working on the side, you slowly realize and question what you're doing. You go into a job that at first you really enjoy. But as the months turn into years and years turn into decades, you're doing the same thing over and over and over again, and it just gets boring. The pride you had in your job is long dead, and the thought that this all there is, until you either die or save up enough to retire. But by the time you save up enough to retire, you'll be too old to be able to enjoy much. Story 7. Your parents being way less emotionally mature than you realized, or adults in general who you grew up thinking were intelligent, thoughtful, and informed. It's shocking when they realize just how clueless they actually are. Story 8. Little kids don't have an off button, so you go to work, come home to work more, put them to bed for them to wake up throughout the night, wake up to take them to daycare so you can repeat for like years. If you're under 30, you should not have a child IMO. I'd also forego children if not in a 2-person relationship and without a support group. I don't get how people can do it. Story 9. Managing finances. I learned so much insignificant garbage through all of my education that means absolutely nothing after graduation. I think it would be difficult to do an entire semester on it, but there are other topics that can be added to the welcome to the real world class. Story 10. Being alone, I don't mean absolutely no one. I still have family in my town. I mean having the feeling of no one for true companionship. It's gotten to the point of trying dating apps, and that tends to ruin my self-confidence enough where in-person meeting is beyond stressful. Story 11. Figuring out what to make for supper, trying to change it up so you aren't eating the same 5, 10 meals all the time, and trying to plan meals ahead of time so you can use the same ingredients in different enough meals. Just writing this is exhausting. Story 12. The politics of the workplace. My dad always told me to play the game, but he never really explained what that meant or how hard it would be. He also raised me to speak my mind, stand up for what I believe in, and do the right thing, but 99% of the time, that doesn't coincide with playing the game. Now I'm out of a job because I did the right thing and spoke up. Actions meet consequences. Story 13. Seeing my partner suffering in the hospital never gets any easier. That, and seeing people in authority dehumanizing my partner and others. Dystopian stories don't quite prepare anyone to see how insidious it can be. Story 14. That living for the weekends makes your precious years fly. Stop and smell. The roses means nothing without perspective. I use my neighbor's cat for this purpose. She's really friendly, but I used to hate cats. One day I decided to crouch down and pet her. I'm not a cat person now, but I am beginning to understand the value of these little wholesome moments. Just slow down a little. Story 1579M here. No one ever warned me how hard it would be to use suppositories for my hemorrhoids when I tend to follow through when I fart. The buggers just won't stay in there. Any idea how embarrassing it is to be walking along and a suppository falls out the bottom of the leg of your slacks? Story 16. Groceries. When you are an adult living on your own, you never get to come home and just open up the pantry and grab a snack. You need to think in advance. Go to the store and decide there what kind of snack you want. Also, dinner. Every day you have to come up with something to eat. But hold on. Don't be buying just a load of shit now that you can, because you'll grow fat real quickly. Story 17. Feeling so lonely while married. I know I love him and he loves me, but we both have such crazy schedules. It doesn't feel like we're a couple or life partners, more like roommates discussing what bill is due or what activity the kids have next. IDK, I miss feeling like I have a companion through life. Now it feels like I'm just another obligation to tend to. Crazy thing is, I know I'm not the only spouse that feels this way. It's just the stage of life we're in. RN. Story 18. How to console your teenager when someone you didn't like in the first place dumps them. It feels like knowing the end of the movie and your teen has only just started watching. The first breakup after your first love sucks, but I bet there's a lot of people out there who are grateful that their very first serious relationship didn't pan out. I know I'm glad that mine didn't last. But you can't just say that to your kid. You have to hold space for them and know when to shut your mouth. It's hard seeing them in pain, though. Story 19. Hormonal changes as men and women age and the effect on the marriage relationship. It's so easy to point fingers and bring judgment on couples when things fail, but when those changes happen and not voiced, intimacy dies silently. Libidos are either strong or non-existent depending on the person. Requests are denied, advances stop. Insecurity and questioning lack of desire can cause emotional physical cheating. Then, the marriage ends due to the couple basically being roommates. If this is happening, check in with both spouse doctors. Story 20. When I was in high school and college, your social life is basically laid out for you. You're surrounded by a bunch of young people with lots of free time and common interests. Then you start your career, and suddenly you have limited free time and often nothing in common with your colleagues. You dedicate time and effort to being social, and there's no guarantee it will matter because you and/or your friends might be starting families or traveling for work, etc. Dating as an adult is similar. Story 21. The amount of time and effort spent on food, deciding what to eat, grocery shopping, food prepping and organizing, cooking, eating, doing the dishes, cleaning the kitchen 3 times a day, and then add in doing it for your partner or kids, etc. And then worrying if you're eating the right stuff. Am I eating enough whole foods? Are these vegetables covered in pesticides? Is milk actually good for you? Are seed oils ruining my health? It's endless. Story 22. How little time you have for yourself. You work for 8 hours, get home, make dinner, clean up the kitchen, and then you have like 2 hours before you need to go to bed so you can do it all over again. Then the chores pile up so you have to waste a big chunk of the weekend as well. I don't understand how people can work, have kids, keep their home tidy, and go to the gym and get a good night's sleep. Like how? Story 23. Living paycheck to paycheck. Man, as a kid, even when we were broke, I still had cereal in the morning, lunch, and dinner. I had love from mom and dad. As an adult, I'm so thankful to not have kids cause, man. Owning a house, grabbing lunch and dinner, shit is crazy expensive. I realize this sounds so first world, but I stress about not being able to make it for a month or two and just getting lost in debt. I'm barely scraping by. Haven't had a vacation in 5 years, don't see one soon either. It's scary and stressful. Story 24. The absolute mind-blowing stupidity of other people. I believe bone deep that being an adult was super cool, and adults enjoyed being adults. Maybe someone did tell me that many adults are giant toddlers who lie and cheat to get their way, but I didn't register it. Story 25. If you date people with debt and bad credit, it can quickly become your problem as your relationship progresses. I did not grow up with money, so when I finally had some, I thought I was supposed to help people in need dig out. Obvious, right? Well, this seems like a nice thing to do, but it's also a complex web of psychology on both ends, regardless of intentions. Several times I was pretty naive about this, and it messed up some great friendships. Story 26. The crushing regret and uncertainty of, did I make the right decision? Did I invest the right money, choose the right job, keep the right friends, marry the right person, buy the right car, slash, etc. So, many decisions. And you never get to find out if they're right until it's way too late. As an adult, the backlash of making a wrong decision feels way heavier than as a kid. Story 27. Having to figure out what to make for dinner. Not just this, but figuring it out enough ahead of time so that I've made a list of ingredients and gone to the store so that when it's time to prepare dinner, I can. And all the cleanup afterward. My partner does quite a lot of cooking these days, but I still hate meal planning. Story 28. Pursuing the proper career. I went to school for business administration and finance and should have gone to work on Wall Street or gone to Wharton and became a junior executive. I was in a technology since 1998 or 1999, and I fell into the IT field simply because I had some relevant experience and started doing that for a living in 2011 and have been doing it ever since. I'm very intelligent, but I feel a lot of my potential is being wasted doing high and technical tasks instead of making important decisions, trading stocks and options, or coming up with a strategy for an entire company or division. I don't think I'll ever be happy in my career unless I'm running my own firm or the CTO or CIO of some larger firm. Story 29. From reading these comments, I think my parents did a pretty good job preparing me for most things, but I know I'm not prepared for intense grief. I haven't experienced it yet, and I don't think there is a way to prepare, but it's an inevitability that I'm not looking forward to. Story 30. Definitely making new friends. I've personally had the experience of losing trust in nearly anyone I could conceive as a possible friend due to my last friend group. Had taken a different path of life improvement than they had, and got ostracized for it because it wasn't aligned with their expectations. This was a friend group of 8+ years I had suddenly lost, which was hard. This also made dating hard, as now I can't trust anyone with my heart. It's a work in progress, but the alone time is both a blessing and a curse. Helps realign where I need to head in life to keep me focused, but also can be maddening not to have anyone to interact with on a deeper emotional level to end up feeling isolated. It's a life I've learned to live with for a year now, and learning to trust and unjade myself to interactions and relationships. Story 31. I'm 45 and still looking around for my designated adult. My parents and grandparents didn't teach me much about being a functioning adult. I quit school, got a job, and moved out at 16. Then woke up one day at the age of 21 finding myself a married parent. I spent the next 20+ years hustling to feed and clothe the kid. And once they were in college, I found time to stop and realize that I'm basically still that 16-year-old, just with 45 years limited experience. I'm old enough to be a grandmother and I don't know WTF is going on. I've had a single income all this time, so I have nothing to show for these years, financially speaking. I never was able to finish my degree, and when I look around at other people my age, I feel like I have more in common with 20-somethings than well-established middle-aged adults. I'm not looking at retirement. I just want to go camping and learn to knit. Maybe play some board games and dig around in the garden. I'm no proper adult, and there's no one to look to for guidance, because I'm swiftly becoming one of the only living elders of my family. Story 32. Honestly, the sheer amount of lying, I can't stop running into liars. I detest dishonesty and have made it a point that if I die today, I'm at least known as honest. But my God, the stupid shit people hide from me because they are scared or embarrassed or simply an asshat is truly something that has caught me off guard. Were people not taught to utilize truth? Or is it justified in their minds because it's their truth? Like nobody wants to find what is real anymore. It is all about their feelings. And they lie to themselves more than anyone. So many of my fellow Gen Z peers are delusional and miserable. And they lie. They won't stop lying. It makes me sick. I have no friends anymore because of this shit. I won't let this world or its people break me. You all will have to kill me before I join into your radical ideologies. What a joke. Story 33. A lot of people are scared and confused and lack the communicative skills to express that or the willpower to correct it and overcome it. So you get infighting and rage from individuals who need to feel in control of something. I didn't realize it would be such a common issue, but I'd wager 90% of the population is this way, and it's depressing. Schools need to teach kids how to say they were wrong and change their own minds to learn things, instead of trying to force them to believe they have to be right or else they're making them fight to prove they're right even when they're completely and demonstrably wrong. Story 34. That money is really important. I went into a college in a different city. I barely got money for anything from my dad. Now with scholarship money at the college from my hometown, I can eat way better. I am happier. I strive for more. I don't live for money. You won't see me chasing the bag and stepping on my principles. But it is the cash that lives for me because it has value in the world. Once I use that to find a way to devalue it by growing everything myself or some more extreme stuff, I'll simply just keep it for tough times without a worry for what could be months before I have to repeat a process again. If you ever have kids, don't hold out on money with college. Story 35. I wish someone would have explained that being automatically praised for doing well and putting in effort ends with school and university. I basically was a bright child who failed their whole career because I didn't realize or care for the fact you have to suck up and play social games to make it in the career realm. Hard work and dedication not only may not get you anywhere, but it's also often a detriment if people feel threatened by you. Learn that the hard way. Story 36. Having to figure out what to eat every single day. It was easy when you came home from school and mom, grandma, etc. was cooking and had dinner for you, or maybe someone even packed your lunch. As an adult, it's what to buy. Which store carries what you need? How long does it take to make it? Does it fit with your work schedule? What way does it need to be prepared? How to properly store it? What haven't I had in a while, etc. I just end up with a folder full of recipes. LOL, my weekend meals are not as simple as my weekday meals. Or meal prep and make 2 dishes on the weekend and eat it throughout the week, freeze them. Story 37. Needing medical help or assistance and being dismissed instead of receiving help. The amount you have to advocate for yourself just so you can have some idea on why your body/mind is struggling is astronomical. It's taken nearly 30 years of consistent issues and multiple different GPs in the last few years just so someone will co-cider thinking beyond lose weight. It's anxiety or it's just depression. I had to figure out that it is likely X, Y, or Z, and even then I get told that's impossible. It's rare or there's no cure, so no point in testing. I'm struggling to exist in a world that is making it harder every day, and I'm supposed to fight people that I have to pay for their attention. The best part is, you can't get emotional or angry because then you're non-compliant, or if you ask for any help with pain, you must be a drug seeker. Why can I be held more responsible for a minor mistake than doctors can by completely dismissing and ignoring people that leads to less quality of life? Story 38. Caring for your parents when they get older and literally watching them die. Nothing prepares you when they get sick and they have to rely on you. Nothing prepares you when you are told they have days left. It was on me to other parent that their spouse is dying. That was the hardest thing I ever had to do, and I still have nightmares sometimes about it. Nothing from seeing either parent sick prepared me for having to tell my mother. By the time the funeral was over and the drive back from the cemetery, I still was in shock what was going on. Story 39. The downfall of democracy in front of my eyes. The struggle to simply survive working over full time with 2 incomes. The fact that childcare costs almost what it pays to work. That people can simply be swayed by the prices of eggs. That going to the doctor could be financially devastating. That homeownership means constantly battling an unforeseen opponent that will sneak into your wallet and slap you when you least expect it. That every year, I don't know how much I will pay my mortgage company for a home I bought for a set price due to escrow changes. Story 40. Property taxes, escrow adjustments, and how it affects your house payment. I bought my house in 2020 when interest rates were super low. My original payment was $830, totally manageable. Bumped it up to $1,000 to knock that principal down. In the past few years, the value of the house shot up about 35%, and the town reevaluated my tax situation. Now, after a couple shortages on the escrow account, they raised my payment to $1,175 to make up for it, with no warning. So my payment jumped up $345 out of nowhere, and I pay more in taxes and insurance than I do for the actual house payment. It's a good thing I try to keep a cushion for emergencies. I thought you got your mortgage payment amount, and that's what it is for 30 years. Silly me. Story 41. I feel like no one can prepare me for anything anymore. We live in a world that is rapidly changing, and nothing has ever been the way it was supposed to be. Dating, housing, education, jobs, friendships, etc., etc. How can someone prepare me for anything when it changes so fast that no one has lived anything going on anymore? We're just flying by the seat of our pants. I guess the adult problem no one prepared me for was to just hold on as best you can. None of us have any idea what tomorrow brings, and if you think you do, you're screwed. Story 42. That I'm horny all the time. Relationships of any kind are fleeting. Work, eat, sleep, limited free time, taxes. Is this it, the human experience? How unnecessary and convoluted most things are. Why can't people just be honest and straightforward? If you don't have money, you can't live. When you do have money, everything just becomes more expensive. And now you don't have money. I don't know what I'm supposed to do with my life and all the options just kind of suck. Yes, it would be great to have a profession or know what I want to do with my life because I'm forced to earn a living. But wouldn't it be better to go on cool space adventures? Where are my starships and calls for adventure? To be stuck here, I never expected life to just kind of be, how do I put this? So boring. As a man, you're only seen if you are useful. Story 43. Luck-based timing is a thing that can be frustrating for others and fortuitous for a different group of people. You won't always win everything out. It's about finding wins as often as you can. Rarely in adulthood is the path clear-cut and straight. You have to accept a mixture of wins and losses in whatever you do. Also, I feel a lot of adult problems are people overcommitting themselves to what they believe the should do per society. The reality is, you can always scale back in certain things. Are you always tired from going out and socializing? Do less. Do you feel like you don't have enough time for your kids? Do less. The trade-off game of adulthood is something that isn't taught to you as a kid. In fact, most media and schooling seems to emphasize follow a set path of maximum potential, but that's not the case. Story 44. How much of your life you just have to give up? When you factor the amount of time it takes you getting ready for work, getting to and from your job, your shift, time you sleep, etc., you really only get a quarter of your total life to yourself. This is something I still can't fully accept and wrap my mind around, that this is just what life is, and I have to learn to like it if I want to try and not be miserable. Needless to say, I am absolutely miserable, and I'm only 26. Story 45. Lack of mentorship is the biggest problem. To me in the world, mentorship is a two-way street. Younger people absolutely get something out of an elder giving good advice. But it's a unique snapshot for elders to see the plight of younger folks today. Talked with a young girl the other day. She had all but given up on America, the future, and her life. It was deeply saddening, and for real. A 5-minute convo between an older guy and a younger girl, and everyone in that place made me feel like a perv. The world is fucked. Story 46. How people don't care what you do. Early on in my sobriety, I was worried how it would look if I wasn't drinking. In my head, I had a plan to look like I was drinking by getting juice or soda in a drinking glass, a cranberry juice in a tumbler, or a non-alcoholic beer in a pint usually. After a couple times, I realized no one gave a shit what I was drinking. I learned that it goes with just about everything. My clothes, my hair, my activities are the same. Only I was critical of what I'm doing. It cleared my head to worry about other things. Like, is that freckle going to turn to cancer? Which it hasn't. Story 47. Learning financial responsibility. That is, saying no to yourself. Just because you want something that doesn't mean you should get it. And just because you can pay for something that doesn't mean you can afford it. Took me way too long to figure that shit out, and I'm still dealing with the consequences today. And it's much worse now than it was a few decades ago, because everyone has such easy access to credit. One day you're in high school, and you have to ask permission to go to the bathroom. 6 months later, you're in college, and banks are throwing $2K credit cards at you. No wonder so many people get themselves in trouble. Story 48. Being the adult authoritative figure in a child's perspective. I work at a school, and anytime a kid comes to me with a problem, I'm always seeking out a much older staff member to help me because I'm terrified of doing or saying the wrong thing. They'll come to me with something, and the first thing I say is, "Did you tell an adult?" Then I realize, I am an adult. They're telling me. I'm almost 30 and I still feel like I'm 17. Story 49. I have to feed people all the time. My life revolves around food. I'm always thinking of what to cook, make, buy, fill the fridge. To go along with that, I have to pay bills to keep the food thing working, the food cooker thing working, the stuff to wash the food with. Then it's the aftermath of food. The cleaning, floors, walls, dishes, appliances, people that ate the food. Then I have to deal with the food waste, the toilet, trash, people that made the trash and toilet stuff. Then pay for exercise and medicine because the people ate too much or too little food. It's exhausting. Story 50, the struggle with keeping things clean. I'm always cleaning something in the kitchen. Dust is everywhere. And then there's children, and maybe pets. Don't forget the lawn, plumbing, electricity, heating. Everything needs maintenance. Lots and lots of cleaning. Like building sandcastle art at low tide and coming back the next low tide to start all over again. Story 51, navigating. Getting the essential care you need while not losing all of your money. There are no good doctors out there looking out for your financial well-being. The mechanic is going to try to eke out every last penny you have, or if they don't want to do the work, they'll charge 10x the rate they otherwise would. You have to be able to fend for yourself without neglecting your needs at the same time. It's brutal. Story 52, making friends outside of work school. As some people have said, having to plan meals. I think it sucks no matter the situation. If you're feeding a family, you have the burden of needing to provide variety. If you're feeding just yourself, the burden can be having to eat the same meal every day for a few days. Where I live, at least, groceries don't really sell goods for individual consumption. For example, I have yet to find bread that isn't sold in a whole loaf. So if I buy it, I'm stuck having sandwiches for lunch every single day for a week, or letting half of it go bad. Realizing your parents were a lot younger than you thought. I'm the same age as my mom was when she had me. The realization of having to pick a job that you may stay in for most of your career. When I was in college, my jobs were all temporary. I now work in my field. My current job is based in a small college town, so I don't intend to stay with them forever. If they were in one of the larger cities an hour away, I'm aware that I would potentially stay with them for the rest of my career. I know when I eventually leave, I'll need to consider if the new position is one I'll want to keep long-term. Story 53, clerical incompetence impacting my life. My wife's sinus surgery was accidentally coded as optional and cosmetic, not required for her to continue to be able to breathe, and what followed was 8-month ordeal between U.S. medical and insurance. It was resolved after 50-plus hours on the phone with a dozen people, with a hospital phone manager finally saying, "Oh, I see it's actually coded wrong. Click, click. Sorry about that. You're all set now." Maddening. Story 54. How much people straight out lie or keep appearances while hoping you would guess some concealed motives they expect you to cater to, while mass media is constantly pushing the communication is key BS. But an honest conversation never works out with people who are afraid of rejection, confrontation, their own emotions, etc. I'm autistic. I act on things clearly demonstrated and stated. I'm constantly in trouble because I didn't play my part in someone else's game, or because someone interpreted my actions/words as a polar opposite, because that's how they communicate. Story 55. I would say how little time we actually have in every way you can think of. Our family members and parents get older. We see less of them. The guilt you feel of not spending more time with loved ones before you can't. How little free time we actually have to do anything between chores, work, children, commuting to work. How years seriously fly by, and the older you get, the more time flies by. The dilemma of spending small bits of times with close friends at the expense of time with your kids. Being an adult, 30s, has made me hyper-aware of time and time wasted lost. The only thing I know to do is to do our best to make sure we use our time as efficiently as we can and take in the little moments. Story 56. Being alone after my kids' mom and I split up has been both solace and torture. I have had love withheld from me by family since childhood, usually as punishment for things like underperformance in school, wanting to be a professional musician, which I am, or just doing something that my parents considered embarrassing. It has made me predisposed to assume that I am not good enough to be loved. Intellectually, I know this is silly, but the emotional deprogramming has been almost impossible, and it has probably poisoned every relationship I've ever been in, except for my kid. They love me to the moon and back. Story 57. That most adults are idiots who have no idea what they're doing. Here's why. Although the average IQ is hypothetically 100, real-world distribution is leaning heavier on below 100. What this means is a lot of adults struggle with things like recursion. John told Mary that Anthony had heard from Ted that Lisa borrowed Mary's car. Is incomprehensible for many and difficult to keep track of for most people. Many don't understand conditional hypotheticals. Would you have been late for work today if traffic had been worse? Will make them think you're accusing them of being late when they weren't. Maybe about a third of people don't understand anachronisms or time at all. For example, this classic interview question. Most people will either think this first interview is staged or they will agree with the interviewee. The reason is that if your IQ is 90 or above, this is easy to answer. And you may not know that people who are below 90 in IQ don't have the mental hardware to figure out why Obama wasn't in the Oval Office on 9/11. And it's frankly hard for people above 90 to understand how someone could not understand something so simple, so it seems fake. Some of you may have noticed a large part of the population have little to no empathy for others and are incapable of understanding consequences until it affects them personally. This is because a lot of people never develop theory of mind. That is, they don't understand that other people have a different experience. So for example, someone who has never had any serious illness may think healthcare is useless and should be disbanded. And because a lack of theory of mind typically means they also don't understand hypotheticals, risks, and time, they will actually think that they will never need healthcare. And when they get cancer or something, they will be shocked that they're no longer covered by the healthcare they voted to get rid of. And they won't be able to understand that either, that their own actions actually caused this current event. Another important one is mapping. Let's say there is a line of 100 cars sequentially colored in the 7 basic colors of the rainbow. The rainbow goes from red to violet. If you're standing on one end and the car closest to you is red, what color is the car on the opposite side? If you're below 90, this is a seriously difficult question. For 100 IQ and above, this is as easy as answering what color the red car is. My point is that I have had so many arguments with people who I now understand simply didn't even understand what I was talking about. I use simile a lot, and simile is incomprehensible for people with an IQ of 85 or below. For example, if I were to use something like the classic quote, "Life is like a box of chocolate, you never know what you're going to get." I've been in many situations where people would get frustrated, derail from the topic, and start an argument about how life is nothing like a box of chocolate because chocolate is candy and life is a series of events. Before I learned all this, I just thought they were being pedantic dicks, but now I realize they simply were unable to understand the metaphor. Like Forrest Gump wouldn't even have been able to understand what his mom meant by that. So if your IQ is above 100 and you find yourself in a conversation/argument where people seem to not grasp very basic things, the chance is that they simply don't. Story 58, taxes, finances, emotional maturity, emotional awareness, bills. You know, life I general. My parents were very much the figure it out on your own type of people. I don't understand why educating your kids on how to get ahead is such a bad thing in poor communities. Rugged individualism with zero knowledge of how the world works isn't great. Generational wealth and knowledge starts with one smart person in your family. It could be your grandparents, your parents, or maybe it's you. If not, hopefully it's your kids. I feel if a parent hasn't tried to educate and pass on good financial and emotional values, they've tripped up as a parent. Story 59. Generally, existential dread and realizations about the human condition. Primarily, the crushing realization that I'll probably spend the rest of my life living under a capitalistic oligarchy that has no regard for the planet's health or that of the general population. And as an added bonus, there's really nothing we can do on an individual level, so we just feel atomized and helpless, tired and easy to exploit. Story 60. The fact that no one is in charge and the people you thought are in charge are also just regular people and likely idiots. The problems we collectively face are not being handled by anyone. We're all just barreling forward, driven by individual idiots making haphazardly good or bad decisions depending on whose turn, mood, and idea it is. Story 61. How frustrating it is to pay someone to do something for you, then needing to deal with their ups if they do it wrong. Mechanics, contractors, painters, accountants, etc. You hire someone to do something because you can't do it yourself. And then you spend a bunch of money learning so much about it and eventually fixing it all over again. I wish people could do their job right the first time, like I paid them to do. Story 62. Being married and having a horrible mother-in-law who wants you and your marriage to not exist. I don't want my husband to have a bad relationship with his family, but they are so mean to me for no reason at all. He sticks up for me, but it just doesn't get any better. They are just mean people. Story 63. Having to keep a relationship with someone. When we were kids, friends just go in and out of our lives. Now, even your relationship with your family and close friends needs to be maintained, or else you will drift apart. It sucks, especially when you're used to people staying in your life. Story 64. How hard it is to lose pets, especially those who grew up with your kids. Your bond with your beloved pet is stronger than with various relatives you rarely see. That may seem harsh, but losing a pet can be so heartbreaking. Story 65. No matter what is going on with you or for you, everyone else keeps on moving forward. Time keeps moving forward. Grief, severe health issues, severe mental health, everyone and everything is going forward while you're stopped for however long it takes to get through that tough time. That no matter how bad it is, no one is going to be there for you the way you need, not even because they won't. People have to work, tend to their own lives, etc. Story 66. Everyone wants to tell you when you're wrong, but nobody actually seems to know what's right. Hard work loyalty doesn't get you promoted. It just means you worked at a high pay grade without the higher pay. There's a lot more social politics that nobody seems to talk about. Story 67. What happens to you as a man when you go through divorce court? You will lose your home, half your retirement, and be forced to pay her alimony, even if she cheated on you. Now I understand why men are no longer getting married anymore. There really isn't a single benefit in it for them that they don't already get from a long-term relationship. Keep them as girlfriends so you can keep your wealth. Story 68. The problem is that nothing happens easily. Every simple thing, like just paying a bill, for example, involves endless phone calls and time and effort to get it solved. And all of that, just figuring out chores, bills, taxes, health appointments. That takes up your whole life, all your free time. You will be doing nothing but that. All of the exciting stuff you dreamed of doing, even if you do have the money for it, you will never have time or energy for it. Story 69. I love my mom, but she is very critical and still trying to control her kids at 91. I moved across country at 24 and so happy I did. My brothers are miserable having lived near her their whole lives. I'm so grateful I moved and grateful to have siblings to take care of her too. Move while you're still young, go visit every few years or so. Or not. Story 70. Caring for my own parents. How the hell am I supposed to take care of two people who barely taught me to take care of myself? Making doctor's appointments, keeping schedules. They never taught me a lick of it. I figured it out eventually, thanks to enough trial and error. But learning how to take care of another person, simply because my parents were such ass at taking of myself and my sisters, was a really harrowing and eye-opening experience. And God help us all if I hear, "I'm the parent, you're the child," from the woman who depends on me to pay her bills and keep her fed one more time. Story 71. America's insane government wants to put autistic children in farm camps. I thought throwing years of effort into getting my kid diagnosed and then appropriate treatment was more than enough to struggle with. I never imagined the insane government would threaten to take him away from me. Story 72. Dealing with little cruelties. Life is not a movie or Reddit. You can't keep changing your neighbors, friend groups, colleagues willy-nilly. Most people find themselves stuck in certain social groups for extended periods of time. While it's easy to strategize about the big bullies, we often have no recourse for dealing with kinda sorta okay people who will still ruin things with taunts, jibes, manipulations, little things to provoke/hurt/rile you up. When that happens, you realize that these are horrible people, but overall they don't seem to be, at least for larger society. It's a fine line to tread, and nothing prepares you for it. Often trying to distance yourself from such people means breaking away from entire social groups, and most people simply can't afford to. Story 73. How hard it is to make time for yourself, all while maintaining relationships with people and working a full-time job. In childhood, sometimes we live in this illusion that your hard work will be rewarded, but oftentimes in real life, especially corporate workplaces, you'll need to, like many others phrased it, sell yourself. Story 74. That I had undiagnosed ADHD, depression, and anxiety all throughout my life. It hit me especially hard during my 20s, and no one ever suggested that the issues I was dealing with could be treated. I made it a few years into my 30s before I had enough of a nervous breakdown to muster the courage to put myself into a doctor's office. When I finally started meds, it was like a veil was lifted. It was bananas, and left me with a ton of regret about the life I had missed out on. Story 75. Nothing is created for single adults. I've never been married, and I have been single far more than in relationships. It's not even just that living alone on one income is nearly impossible. It's the small things too. It's people giving me pitying looks as they explain how they could never go to a fancy restaurant alone, or the fact that no one buys me a special gift on Christmas. All I get are socks and random household items. I'm going to be honest, the biggest problem is the income thing. A couple can split the rent and bills on a one-bedroom place fairly well, even if times are tough. If you're single, you're scrambling to pay the same rent and the same bills. It is not cheaper to be single. Also, if a grown adult can't sit on their own in a restaurant and eat a meal, That sounds like a bigger issue than me having to go alone anyway. Story 76. No one told me other adults were. I assumed adults knew more than me, and therefore were smarter. I have now realized most people are morons, and leadership is no more than the popular kids in school who didn't know anything but had important connections. Story 77. I've grown to really hate the work culture in America, and am realizing just how unfair life really is. Things are rigged here to keep you hustling away forever, barely able to afford the nice things in life. Doesn't help that social media is a fantasy land waving a high-end lifestyle in your face every day, making everyone feel like shit about themselves. I miss when things were more genuine and old school. Now marketing and sales is in your face 24/7. That's not even getting into how insane this country's politics have become. I'm tired, and I'm only 28. Story 78, seasonal friendships. Sometimes things fade within a few months, and other times, a year or two, no matter how much effort you put into that person, or vice versa. It's way weirder when you realize the people you had kept around were fun for the memories at those specific times, but didn't really give a about you that much. I won't lie, I miss a lot of friend groups I've had in my past, even if things went downhill. One group I had met at random at the mall, and I chose to open up to them, and then we all hung out just like that. I had gone to the beach with them and did all types of shit. Even though they were terrible for me, I was just glad to have people I got along with for the time being. I didn't question the morality and logic of their quality of friendship. They got me out of my comfort zone for sure, but were they bad influences? Of course. Almost got me locked up, but boy do I have some funny stories to tell El Mao. So sometimes you don't regret meeting them, but you do regret not knowing their true intentions when you should have. These friends I had met last summer were so much fun, but towards the end of it, they had asked me for money out of the blue. I say what's up and never answered their request, and then they stopped calling. Story 79. I knew it would be hard when they would pass away someday, but nobody tells you how tough it's going to be watching your parents get old. You get to 30 years old and life is good. You feel like you're in your 20s, but you probably have more money. But then your parents have a health issue, and then your mother-in-law has a stroke. After it starts, it feels like it never ends. And if we're lucky enough for our parents to live past 80, there's a good chance the last 10 or 15 years of their life it will be tough on our feelings towards them because their mental health and capabilities will decline. My mother-in-law is 68, but she's reached a point of mental decline where some issues that my wife would really benefit from clearing while she's still alive are most likely never going to happen.